Now, this has been a big week for you, past few weeks, a big European seminar tour. Talk me about this whole process, what it's been like meeting so many great people.
It's been great. I mean, my main motivation really honestly was to come out here and train with Carl again. Princey, he'd come out to the U.S. for a couple months, and then he left in October, so it's been a few months, and so now I figure out, he has the twins, so I came out here, brought my daughter. So honestly, this is more about me getting in some training. And then I love doing seminars because honestly, that's why I have my daughter teaching with me. I learn more, it sharpens up. So when people sit there and when I'm showing a technique, it's usually because I want to work on that myself. So I teach it, I show it, and I have to really understand it and explain it to, so many different people that it really makes me own all the concepts and principles that I'm trying to apply.
Now, you and Carl go way back. I mean, the first time me and you met was at an ACB show, which he was a matchmaker for that company. You were a commentator. You were going to have a fight at one point, but that didn't materialise. Talk to me about the first time you met Carl, and obviously he's become a part of your team when you've been fighting for Bellator recently. Talk to me about your friendship and relationship with him in the fight game.
Well, it's easy for me to be friends with Carl. It's like being friends with my brother. We're so similar in so many ways. We both have a way of always trying to look at the world. You know what I mean? We're the kind of guys, if there's a beautiful tree outside our house, we're outside looking at it from the roof, looking at it from the grass, sitting in the tree, looking around, talking to other people what they think they're seeing in the tree, draw a picture, show me. And that's how we treat life. We're very much scientists. And, when we start talking about the martial arts, I enjoyed that we had the same perspectives and same understanding. And he just has a very good application of understanding of the mixed martial arts. And I dare say when it comes to hands and footwork, he's a master at. I don't know many guys I've ever trained with that I think are better. And then really a great aptitude, undersells himself in the other areas as far as his understanding of wrestling and jiu-jitsu. I mean, he's here, I'm part of the classes, he's teaching a move, he'll look at me, I'm like, I concur. It's exactly how I would show the same move in areas that I'm an expert at. And so, it's easy. Carl's a great guy. I really enjoy having him part of the camp and being my coach.
Now, obviously, we are here for the grand opening of Manchester Top Team. Brilliant to see such a vibrant MMA community in this city. We've got the likes of Laron Murphy, who's fighting at UFC London next week, one of Carl's fighters. Kane Musa, obviously on the Bellator roster. In terms of how far this city has come in MMA, how great is it to see?
I'm happy. And that's one of the reasons, too, that the tours do for me. I get to go into new areas and bring martial arts to areas that are starving for it, And I think that, Manchester has such a rich combat history, all of England does, really, if you think about it. I mean, hell, the English used to almost rule the whole world. And so when it comes to especially, boxing, and even catch wrestling used to be big here. So really, they undersell themselves of understanding grappling. And just that most of the men here and women, really are fascinated with the hands, throwing punches, I mean, right now, all the heavyweight belts are owned by the British, and so you've seen that, look, you got Anthony Joshua is a phenomenal boxer, world champion in every way, great skills, great athlete. But, Tyson Fury is just special. His understanding of war and combat is just unreal, especially, I mean, it's not like he's an old guy, 31 years old, and just such an aptitude and showed such mental resilience to come back from adversity. I know what that's like to deal and struggle with demons, and I've seen so many other people that fall to it. And here, not only is the guy a warrior inside the ring, but he's a warrior outside the ring, and a strategist too. Usually, I'm more of a strategist than I am a warrior. I'm always looking at, analyzing, okay, what's the best way to approach this? Some people are just warriors, pound their chest, face forward, eat bullets in the face, kind of like the girl that our featherweight champion UFC, Zhang. Yeah. Last night. She's a warrior. She's not a strategist. In fact, I actually had Joanna winning the fight because I felt that she's using technique. She's making her miss at times, coming forward. Wally Zhang's technique is I eat a punch, and I'm just going to throw back, and I'm going to hit you harder than you can hit me. I'm not a fan of that. It's great, it works, but guess what? That doesn't last forever. Eventually, your physique and your fortitude will fail you. Your mind stays the longest. And so, crazy tangent, right? Pre-workouts.
No, it's good.
So coming down here to Manchester and stuff, I mean, you see it, all the guys on their feet slick. I mean, hell, I have a Manchester coach for a reason because, you guys have hands and feet, footwork. On your feet, I think are some of the best fighters in the world in general when it comes to striking for MMA. obviously you guys don't wrestle like we do in other places, where in America, our kids are 6 years old wrestling. My children wrestle part of their school. It's in our academic curriculum as far as one of our sports we play. We don't play football. Not American. We play American football, but not obviously soccer. It's not as much in the school systems, even on the elementary level, like that there as much as we have wrestling. It's one of a very popular sport. Obviously soccer is too, but so Americans really have a leg up when it comes to the wrestling aspect, kind of like how it is in Dagestan or in Chechnya. Where the wrestling's in the curriculum. So coming out here, it's a great compliment of me showing and learning and constantly refining my skills on my feet and able to share my skills with the grappling area.
You mentioned Tyson Fury there. Did you happen to see his teaser of training with Darren Till last year? He put out a video of him saying that he would be very much open to having an MMA fight and that Till would train him. And then he did say that he had a conversation with Conor McGregor, which Conor McGregor denied that there was a conversation. Is that something you'd like to see, Tyson Fury step into the MMA world?
Yeah, he just has to get with somebody that's smart at how to not take away what he already does well, but help translate it to where it just works also in MMA. I see too many fighters that try to make a carryover, and they do one of two mistakes. One, they try to make them fight completely different for MMA. I'm like, well, now the guy's a B-level fighter. You took away his strengths. Or B, they go in there and like, okay, it's anti-jiu-jitsu, anti-wrestling. Just got to worry about beating. And I'm like, it's not necessarily that either. There's a middle ground of understanding how to use it to where, oh yeah, you know what? Now we're going to use a frame, but you're going to use it for uppercuts. We're not going to use our frame to get an underhook. I'm going to use grappling, but use grappling to also strike. If you see the greater fighters do that, and sometimes some of our trainers will just try to reinvent a guy. You don't need to reinvent Tyson Fury. If I had 6 months with him, he's ready to give anybody in the UFC a heavyweight a run for their money.
So you would be open to helping him out, training that MMA style? Because obviously with your ground game, that would be an area that you would look to work on, and you're part of the Manchester MMA community now, it's fair to say. So yeah, you'd be open to having a bit of a spar with him?
Oh, yeah, I would love to be able to move in there with him. Obviously, he's the best in the world. I think he's the best that's ever fought at heavyweight. He's slick. He's a slick big man. When's the last time you heard that and said in the same sentence? I'm a fan of that type of fighting. And I think that, one of my other favorite heavyweights is Lennox Lewis, who is also a great strategist, great ability to use his reach, but at times he always played it safe. There was never a time he didn't eventually, I'm more like Lennox Lewis, always trying to be the scientist about it. I think Fury's awesome because he's like a warrior poet. Not only does he use science and strategy, but then he puts emotion and heart behind it too, and that's just a rare combination. The same thing as far as a man who's that tall, that heavy, and still able to move and use strategy and work to the body. Hell, he knocked down Deontay Wilder with a body shot as the taller man.
And then you mentioned Weili Zhang versus Joanna Jędrzejczyk. From at the moment of this recording of this interview, it was last night. So the main event came under a lot of scrutiny from the MMA world. Adesanya left the arena with the belt, but with boos. Now, when you defeated Tim Sylvia, the crowd weren't aware of what had happened to Tim Sylvia's arm. So it was a similar reaction from the crowd. So do you empathise with his position? Because it wasn't actually you getting booed, it was Herb Dean getting booed for the decision, and which obviously was the right call at the time. So can you just transfer what happened in those scenarios?
Actually, they're very different scenarios. People booed in my fight because they thought it was a bad stoppage, not realizing that I had broken Tim Sylvia's arm in several places. And Herb had seen the break, so Herb made a phenomenal call that later on he was redeemed on when Dana was able to say at the post-fight interview that, yes, Tim's arm is broken and he's going under surgery because it was broken so badly they had to put a plate in his arm. Herb Dean saved Sylvia's career. So those boos were unwarranted, and again, they weren't at me, so I didn't quite, The only thing I was ever upset about in that fight was I didn't get announced as the heavyweight champion. And that was a complete, on Buffer's part, he's apologized 1,000 times. Wasn't his fault, but because of all the turmoil afterwards, it threw a bump in the road. Whereas, look, understand why Adesanya did what he did. What people are booing, and guess what? It's a curse of the champion belt. You see so many fighters do it. Fighters fight with spirit and technique, and they're warriors, and people like seeing that. You know, Adesanya came out when he fought Whitaker, he fought like a warrior, right? How he fought Romero, he fought him like a businessman. He made a business decision to not take chances, to try to get him out of there and show his warrior spirit, because it was safer to keep on the outside and throw low kicks. I don't fault him for that. Guess what? His next fight, he's going to get paid more than he would have if he had been lost, because he retained the belt. He still has pay-per-view buys. But it was a business decision, and that's what upsets people. But if I was in Israel's corner, I would say, hey, that's the price you pay. If you don't want to hear those boos, you're going to have to take chances and be that warrior again. Go out there and fight with a little bit of emotion. Take risks to try to remove the guy in front of you. If you fight like a businessman and you're fighting to make sure you retain the belt because it's a bigger paycheck, people are going to boo you. But that's a decision you made, and I'm pretty sure, you know, Adesanya understands that. You know, he understood that I made a decision. Tyrone Woodley did it, and I didn't fault him for doing that. With Tyrone, man, look how he devastatingly won his welterweight belt, knocking out Robbie Lawler. It was phenomenal. It was just a battle. After that, he turned into a businessman, and he admitted it. He says, hey, look, I don't want to lose the belt. This thing's hard to keep. I'm going to do the smart decisions to win. I personally don't boo that, and I don't fault it, because to me it's war strategy. It's the other guy, you got to take it from me. Figure out a way to beat me if I'm doing this game. But the only time I ever kind of smirk is when guys complain about it. I'm like, well, if you don't like those boos, take a chance. Go out there and finish somebody. If you want to play it safe and be a businessman, people don't cheer businessmen in a fighting ring.
Yeah, it did seem that it didn't massively affect him. Like you said, he stuck to the game plan that he desired to go with. We touched on that Tim Sylvia fight. After that Tim Sylvia fight, you had that horrific motorcycle accident, which must have been one of the most testing times of your career, both physically and mentally. Looking back upon that now, like, how integral was that to the next stage of your career? Because you mentioned that the silver lining in that was that you got to spend a lot of time with your wife and your family. And yeah, let's go.
The silver lining was it broke me mentally, and it made me a much stronger warrior. If you've seen, you know, there's certain parts of my fight, I wasn't mentally tough. I was too gifted as an athlete. And my wife hates when I say that because she thinks I'm being obnoxious, but look at my children. Genetically, I was gifted to be stronger and faster than most people. My children are stronger and faster than most people. But that makes things easy for you. And when things are easy for you, you become mentally weak. That's why I'm hard on my children when it comes to their training, because I don't want them to be as soft as I was in my early 20s and mid-20s. Then, I was a heavyweight champ of the world, and I wasn't mentally that tough. You know what I mean? I broke someone's arm in 40 seconds. It wasn't that much hard work. After I broke my leg, it took away that athleticism for many years, and I had a hard time. And now I've come full circle where now I have my athleticism coming back to me, especially, man, I went down to Colombia and we did stem cells, filled my body back up. I feel incredible. That's even why I was late here. We're at the gym lifting with my daughter, doing all the same workouts. But that gave me the mental toughness because it was a deficit. I always tell people, usually the best coaches were not very good fighters or wrestlers themselves because they struggled. They didn't maybe have the physical talent at it, but that made them try harder at the mind. They understand it better. Well, I got the gift of having my leg broken. It was a gift to me because it took away that athleticism for so long that I had to become mentally tough, had to really understand what I was doing, had to really understand myself, and now I'm on that path.
And then we fast forward a couple of years later, and you had to introduce Brock Lesnar to the UFC. So when you got that call that fight was going to get made, what were your reactions to him joining the MMA community? Because obviously he does have massive credentials in the amateur wrestling background. Were you excited by that prospect? Did you kind of overlook his abilities in terms of what he was going to bring to the cage?
No, actually, I watched Brock Lesnar wrestle when I was in high school and he was in college. When he wrestled Stephen Neal, who's probably one of the greatest American amateur wrestlers. he just decided to go into American football and make a hell of a living becoming a world champion football player. But throughout college, I mean, he was the 1999 world champion, Stephen Neal, and was a two-time NCAA champion in his sophomore year. It only lost to Kerry McCoy, who became also an Olympic representative. So the guy was talented, and he had beat Brock's junior year. And so I paid attention to Brock because of that, watching, oh man, that was a really close match. That wasn't a blowout at all. And here you got this junior versus this, the repeat senior of the national champion who went on to become a world champion and beat everybody. He was the best wrestler in the world. He won our Dan Hodge Award for America. And so I knew how dangerous he would be at wrestling. I just knew that his understanding of submissions wasn't going to be very good because how much can you learn that quickly? I knew that, striking, he still doesn't understand it. But those areas were the areas I wanted to take advantage of him. I didn't think striking would be very easy to take advantage of him because you could see, like even his last fight, his ability to put me on the ground. I mean, the guy is one of the best wrestlers. I think it was like 105-3. Mark Hunt couldn't keep him from putting him down. So I figured the fight would take place in jiu-jitsu where I would also have an advantage.
And then later on in that year, he went on to defeat Randy Couture to win the heavyweight title. And the rivalry really stepped up a notch heading into UFC 100. It did become a bit of a bad blood rivalry. How much hatred was there between you two, and how much was selling the biggest event in MMA history at the time?
Well, obviously, it's an advantage that we didn't like each other. We sold no pay-per-views. But, I mean, just, idealistically, we're just two different human beings. I'm much more liberal. I'm okay with, my fellow man. And I guess, I'm more of a Democrat in the USA. Even though I register as an independent, I'm very much more liberal. But that's also because I travel the world, and I'm, if I told most of the people that are English my ideas, they're like, yeah, that's normal thought process. We have some crazy conservatives in the U.S. that just, everybody needs to go ahead and just fend for themselves and die. They don't worry about, anybody. Very little empathy, and he follows under that very conservative thought process. And so, from the way and styles of our fighting to the way we approach life and how we treat our fellow man, we're completely different human beings. So we're very much each other's antithesis.
And there has been rumblings from your behalf. You do want to step into the world of pro wrestling, slowly dipping your toe into that. I know you've been working a bit with Josh Barnett. He has his Bloodsport promotion. Brock is obviously going to be main event in WrestleMania this year against Drew McIntyre. Would you rather have an MMA fight with him, again, number 3 in MMA, or would you like to go and test yourself in his waters with the WWE down the line?
No, I think that I would rather fight him. Doing the WWE type thing, I don't think they'll let us match up against each other anyways, because they're not going to let me put him in a bad position, and I don't think he wants to find out what happened if I get put him in a bad position.
Do you think that will happen, though, at some point? Do you see yourself signing with the WWE? Because we've seen Cain Velasquez, Ronda Rousey, hell, even Matt Riddle. He was a big part of the UFC's fight night cards for a long time, and now he's one of the best stars in NXT. There has been some great crossover stories. Do you see yourself joining that pattern at some point in your career?
Quite possibly. I think it's another format of martial arts, really. When people look at the pro wrestlers, I see it as like Keanu Reeves doing his John Wick movies, watching guys do realistic stunts and movement and entertainment. Obviously, Keanu's not really shooting people, and just like, it's not really happening in wrestling, but it's still it's a form of theater that portrays martial arts. I mean, hell, my favorite martial artist was Bruce Lee. He was an actor. I mean, his portrayals, I didn't watch him fight, I watched him do movies. It was stuntmen he was throwing around. But still, the portrayal of martial arts, the storytelling, what it did for me to inspire me and give me direction in life was very good.
And one of the wins that you always go back to, and you would regard as one of the best and most proud of your career, is the win over Nogueira. Such a dominant win over one of Pride's best superstars. At the time of when Pride had just joined the UFC, the likes of Mirko Cro Cop, guys like that who you went on to defeat. How exciting of a time was that in MMA when you look back on that now?
I think it was great. It finally got rid of the fact that, we had all these great fighters in Pride, all these great fighters in UFC, and they were not matching up with each other. So having Nogueira come over, because we have similar styles, it was a great honor to be able to fight him. And then, because people were always in conversation, who was the better submission artist, myself, Nogueira, Verdum started getting into the conversation, which I think he's great at jiu-jitsu, but I think Nogueira and I were more known as submission artists because we finished people a lot more higher than just out-positioning them and sweeping them and moving around. It's almost like having that, fantasy talk, who would beat who at this? Mike Tyson or George Foreman, who hit harder, and here we had a situation where both of us lined up to face each other, and I got to win by submission in our second fight, so very proud of that.
And finally, just wrapping up now, your last win over Roy Nelson in Bellator. Do you see yourself competing with Bellator this year? And if so, could you pinpoint an opponent who you'd love to test yourself against?
Yeah, I have one more fight on contract with Bellator, so I'm assuming that means I'm going to be fighting with them this year. But as far as, actually, Princey and I were just talking about this. I'm not the type of guy that needs to fight somebody. I think people do that because it sets a goal and it's a destination. I'm focused on myself. That's who I'm bringing into the cage. That's the warrior that I'm constantly trying to defeat. So match me up against somebody that at least isn't going to fall over. So when I push against them, the resistance back allows me to test myself. Roy gave me resistance. He allowed me to test myself. And obviously, it's much more enjoyable to win. I won. But even in loss, if I'm building myself up, I'm really winning. I'm becoming a better martial artist. And even today, I hate when I make down slopes in my career. As far as you can see, my performance is going in a negative direction. Positive direction means I'm learning and growing.
I really appreciate the time, Frank. You're a legend of the game, like I said. Yeah, best of luck to you. Thank you very much.